Hi, Lodi.
Good day, Doc.
Hi,
You guys well? Good, good,
Hello.
good.
Good.
How's it going with the animals, Tatenda?
Not bad. It's peak season for us. All the dogs out there somehow have to go to the vet. Yeah.
And just now it's going to be Guy Fawkes, and then you'll have a lot of animals on your doorstep, huh?
Yeah. we have sedatives in reserves ready for them.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so let's get going. What I'd like to do this evening is to just give you a little bit of feedback on week 3 on the assignments. I think what you'll find interesting is the feedback on the water crisis. I've made an analysis of what you've submitted, so I'd just like to share with you what came out of that. Then briefly, I want to talk about the assignments for week 4, which obviously is due on Sunday. However, we are going to see each other on Saturday, so I will address a little bit more on Saturday morning. And then I'll just talk about what's going to happen on Saturday and what you can expect and that sort of thing. Okay, so guys, the week 3 assignments. The first part one, helpers and blockers. Most of you did reasonably well in that particular assignment, but quite a number of you didn't answer the question. If you remember correctly, I said identify 3 helpers, 3 blockers, discuss them briefly, and then take the most serious blocker and expand on that. Now, some gave me a long list of helpers and blockers. Some gave me a bullet point list of about 15 to 20 helpers and blockers, but never discussed it or identified the top 3, the most important 3. Some of you then went into quite an elaborate discussion of the 3 helpers and 3 blockers, which was great. Fantastic. Thank you very much. But you never got to the worst one. To identify the worst one and to really, tell me what that is and why it is and that sort of thing. I'd like to give you another hint as well. When you answer, when it is a question of identify 3 or discuss 4 or the most important or whatever, please number the ones and use subheadings. You want to say the 3 most important helpers are 1, heading, underline, paragraph, discuss. 2, discuss. 3, discuss. It just makes for logic in your presentation. It makes my life a lot easier because I can immediately see where you're heading and what you're doing, apart from having to read. And then sometimes the helpers and the blockers are dear mekaar, and they intertwined, and it just makes it so much easier for me to mark. So some of you did very well, some of you did not do well, and if you didn't do well, you will see my comment on Moodle, say more. You didn't say enough, particularly of the things that I asked you to answer. All right, part 2. Part 2 was not an easy one. I knew it before we even start, but I think you guys handled it exceptionally well. And there was a lot of additional research that was done, a lot of reading about it, a lot of references. And on that one, guys, you either did exceptionally well, and many of the marks, I think it's the highest number of 75 pluses that I've, in my lifetime, allocated to you. But there were also some who failed miserably. Why? Well, you simply did not address it. Now, before I give you feedback, because I did a summary of all the wonderful things that you said and that came out. But I just wanted you to know that in something like this, although I asked you for Scamper, many of you gave me an introduction, which is great. It's always nice to set the scene and give an introduction. Now, I want to ask you a question. What would be a better introduction? Would it be to give an introduction on the tool Scamper and what SCAMPER stand for, or an introduction to the water crisis and set the scene in terms of the water crisis by giving some facts? What percentage do the dams have? What consumption patterns are there? Is it possible to get to the target consumption usage, etc., etc.? How much time do they have until they run out of water? What do the clever people say, and what do the media say about the facts and the figures and so on and so forth? Now, for me, and it was split between half the class gave me an introduction on Scamper, which is fine, but it didn't really contribute to anything because I know what the Scamper thing is. But the other half of you gave me a nice introduction on the water crisis and why there is a crisis. And the other thing is that the crisis is an immediate crisis, in other words, short term, and therefore there needs to be suggestions and recommendations and innovative, creative ideas on how to solve the immediate crisis. And then, of course, there's a longer crisis. There's a longer term crisis. This thing is not going to go away in a month's time. The rainy season is over. Only by an act of God will we now see a massive amount of rain in the Western Cape. Clem Santa, who is a scenario planner, says the likelihood of that is 1.5%. Okay. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But let's assume that the rainy season has come to virtually an end. The cold fronts that are coming through are not giving the rain that would be needed. So we've got a long-term crisis. What will the situation be a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? What is likely to happen in the Western Cape? They forecasted a drought, and that whole area, the worst case scenario is that the whole Western Cape is going to turn into a desert. That's also being publicized. Now, if that is the case, in the long term, what needs to be done in order to control the usage of water, first of all, and secondly, to save water and to generate water? Okay. So I just thought I say to you that from my point of view, it would be better to set the scene in terms of the crisis and tell me what the crisis is and how big the crisis is. How bad is it? Okay. Remember also that there's a holiday coming up. Now, nowadays we talk about the Gauwis, which is the Gauteng people who flock down to the Western Cape over the December, Christmas, January period. In the old days, we used to talk about the Walis because we were from Transvaal. Now, the Walis, or, you know, they also have some other names which I won't mention. But let's say the Gautengers, who are now all flocking down to the Western Cape, what crisis are they going to create? Because they want to go on holiday, they want to go enjoy themselves, and many of them have holiday homes there, etc., and they want to use water. But there is no water to be used. So how do you address that? That's also something to bear in mind. Okay. The other thing is, I'm a great believer from a strategic point of view in what I call fish where the fish are. Who is using the most water? Who are the consumption people who consume water in the Western Cape? Households, industries, farming. Those are the three main ones. Now, of the three, who are the biggest? Is it the farmers? Is it the industries? Or is it the households? Now, one or two of you gave me the facts and the figures, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. It is the households, by far. Okay? So, fish where the fish are. if the households are the ones using most of the water, then we need to address the problem with the households, because they're the ones who must now cut back. They're the ones, and there's no real point in threatening them. There are a lot of rich people living in the Western Cape. They say, well, we'll pay the fee and we pay the fine and we just carry on with using the water. That's not the point. It's a paradigm shift. It's an attitude change that need to happen. You should have addressed that as well. Okay. So if we look at households, industries, and farming, the other point I want to make to you, and very few of you addressed it, one or two did it brilliantly, is what lessons can we learn from other areas, other parts of the world? Let's take Africa. There are parts of Africa where there's very little water. What have they done to survive? What about a place like Singapore and Hong Kong, who do not have any source of water except the water that they import? What do they do? What about Israel? Also, very dry country, very little rain, but they've got large farming communities. What do they do from a farming point of view? What kind of plants do they farm with? Are there certain trees that suck up a lot of water but make no contribution to anything or anybody, which should be gotten rid of in the longer term and be replaced by other kinds of trees and shrubs, etc., crops, and so on and so forth? Okay. The other, if you really want to start analyzing it, if you look at households, 50% of all water used by households are used for bath, shower, and toilet. Those three combined give you 50% of your water consumption. Another third is for gardening. And the other 16% is for filling up the swimming pool and, a couple of other things, washing your car and things like that. So again, fish where the fish are. If the problem is baths, shower, and toilet, what can we do to save water in that way? One person suggested, shower with a friend. I like that. It's not always possible, but not a bad idea, right? Another person suggested that each cistern, before you flush the toilet, why don't you put a brick inside the cistern? Because then by flushing it, you're going to use a lot less water. Someone else, and I want to read this because obviously I can't remember this out of my head. I thought this was very, very interesting. When it's yellow, let it mellow. When it's brown, flush it down. Now, there's a message in there. It's a bit crude, it's a bit rude, but there's a message in there, right? Do you have to flush the toilet every time it's yellow? Or do you wait a little bit, maybe use the toilet once or twice or three times, and when it's really bad, then you flush the toilet? In a crisis situation, guys, those are the kinds of things that one should look at. Okay, so brilliant. Some people gave me brilliant introductions, set the scene very nicely, gave me the facts and the figures. I was totally bowled over, and they set the scene very nicely for us. Okay. Let's move on to the solutions. Again, the solutions should have been, by using SCAMPER, should be what I call fit for purpose. So if this is the problem, which one of SCAMPER can one use to solve that particular problem? And yes, most of you, if not all of you, said, okay, S stands for substitute, so let's discuss what can be done, and gave me wonderful solutions under that one, and then A, adapt, etc., etc., etc. So that's great. That is wonderful. Let me share with you some of the nice ideas. Now remember, we need to save water by using less. We must get the people in the Western Cape to save water by using less. Secondly, we need to find a way to get them to store water. Even if the cold front is not that strong and there's a little bit of rain, catch the damn rain, catch the water, do something about it. And not just households, the farmers, the industries, the mountains, the streams, fix the pipes, and so on, okay? So all of those things. So it's save water, store water, and then use other alternatives instead of water. And there are some very nice ideas of that, and I'll share that with you just now. And the next one is they need to source water, because there is just such a shortage, and the dams are so low that they're going to run out of water. By saving water, what will the impact of that be? Maybe 3%, 5%? Okay. By storing, that's a longer term solution. There are other parts of the world where there are tax incentives for people to put in tanks to catch water. Right? Why don't we do it here? Of course we can, but that's a longer term solution. Okay? Boreholes, tanking of water by ship, pipelines from Lesotho, etc., etc., etc. All of those things to source water and to, in some way, fill up tanks or fill up reservoirs or fill up dams or fill up streams and that sort of stuff. Okay. So there were great ideas, and you all know them, you know, to recycle water, to use grey water, to find waterless alternatives for washing cars, dry baths, and so on. Yes? Hati?
Hi, how are you?
Fine,
I'm
and
just
you?
joining. Yeah, I've no questions yet. I'm just joining.
Okay, right. Welcome. Welcome.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, there were great ideas, and you know, I don't have the time to explain all of these to you, but geoscience, aquifers, aquarenew, hand sanitation, dry farming, dry baths, dry car washing, treating of clouds, you know, making water from humidity, desalination, creating dew points, building channels around mountains, because the moment there's a bit of rain or some ice or snow or whatever, catch the water as it comes down instead of it running into the sea, recycling mine water and getting that down to the Western Cape, and so on. One or two of you even suggested that in the longer term, and this I think is brilliant, is to talk to the agricultural people and to say, guys, you need to change the kinds of crops that you are engaging in, because the current crops are demanding a lot of water, but by changing it, you will use a lot less water in the future. You know, things like that. Cool roofs. Just all kinds of brilliant ways to do it. But of course, there must be priorities. There must be better ways of doing it. There must be, if it's going to cost money, where's the money going to come from? Who's going to invest in it? Are we expecting the central government to do it? Central government, as we heard from yesterday's mini budget, there is no money. So are they going to help them? Is business going to help them? Is agriculture going to help them? Are we going to get donations from overseas? What will the situation be? And that sort of stuff. But clever, creative ideas will find ways of sponsoring it, making it work, and that sort of thing. Okay. So, guys, just to summarize again for you. If I were you, I would have started by setting the scene on how big is the crisis. Secondly, exactly what is the crisis? Thirdly, where is the crisis? Is it households? Is it agriculture? Is it business? And so on. And then to address through Scamper those areas and say, this is what I suggest we do. And as I said, I had some very, very, very good submissions. One or two of you didn't give me an up to standard submission relative to the others, and therefore the marks were not that good. All right, any questions on that particular one before we move on?
Yes, Prof, I've got a question.
Sure.
With specific reference to the scamper, I sort of had a challenge with the R, the reverse. I'd just like to know what other colleagues actually put down on writing to say, probably these are the processes that should be reversed, or these are the government implementations, or anything like that. I sort of had a stumbling block when it came to writing about what could be reversed in this sort of scenario.
In broad terms, Toby, in broad terms, you can reverse thinking. People's thinking. People think, there's no problem. I open the tap and there's water.
Okay.
Right? Paradigm shift, alert, understand the crisis, so reverse the thinking. Then reverse the infrastructure. The infrastructure is nowhere ideal. There's a huge amount of wastage of water happening in the Western Cape through old infrastructure, pumps that are not working, pipes that have burst, etc., etc. So you can reverse that. Then reverse the usage of water and replace it with something else, right? Similar to a substitute, but you can make out a point for reversing the thinking in terms of that as well. So what I wanted you to do is just to think a little bit wider in terms of reverse.
No, I'm in the clear, Prof. I'm in the clear.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Good. Any other comments or questions, guys? Doesn't look like it, but I want to say again, I was pleasantly surprised. There were some brilliant ones there, and I was actually, it was the one assignment where you didn't worry about the number of words. There were some very long ones. I didn't mind that one little bit. I enjoyed reading every word of it. I enjoyed all the wonderful ideas. And there were some brilliant ideas, some really brilliant ideas, supported by sources, references, and so on and so forth. So yeah, well done on that one. Okay, let's move on to week 4. You're currently busy with week 4, and you're working with the dimensions of a creative working climate. And guys, for Sunday, there are 2 assignments. Let's deal with the first one. The first one is you need to do the assignment in terms of the dimensions of a creative working climate. Then the first question is, does your organization support creativity? And you need to cover, as I said in my question, cover all 10 dimensions briefly. Not long stories necessarily, but you've got to cover all 10. So don't just pick 1 or 2 and give me a long discussion on 1 or 2. I want you to cover all the 10 dimensions of the creative working climate, okay? So by answering your question, does your organization support creativity? Use all 10. That's number 1. Number 2, identify where your organization scores the highest on one of those dimensions and the lowest. And give me an example of where it is the highest and why, and the lowest and why. That's question number 2. Question number 3, how are you going to build on the strength, in other words, the one where the highest score is, and how will you improve on the lowest, where the company is not there at all? Okay, and you've got 1,200 words to do that. So just please stick to the 3 questions and give me the questions. And guys, please, I must ask again, there are some of you who still do not put your names on the assignments. You have no idea how long it takes me to go and search for who did submitted what. Because I've got to go through and check and check and check and check and check and check. And then I get emails from you because there are no marks. And then you say, yeah, but I did submit. And then I look again And eventually, between Shingi and myself, then we find it after 3 or 4 days. You know, we found the other ones this morning. I mean, it's Thursday. We shouldn't find submissions on a Thursday. We should get it on a Monday morning. Okay. So just a reminder again, please put your name at the top. All right. So assignment number 1 is the creative working climate. Use the tool, do the assessment of your organization, and then answer the 3 questions. The second one is a little bit of a scenario that I'm creating. And I'm saying to you that, you know, here was a department. You had a head of department who was very creative, innovative, you know, came up with what the CEO called wild ideas, but the wild ideas were working. And for personal reasons, this guy is now leaving the company, and you enter a new HOD, and this HOD is conservative, scared to make a mistake, doesn't want to take chances, you know, but I did say there, but he needs a bit of convincing. And what will you guys do if you were in such a department and you still believe that it's in the interest of the company to come up with what the CEO calls wild ideas, which work, by the way, and how can you get the new HOD on your side by convincing him or her otherwise? Okay, so I'm looking there for some very interesting discussions on, you know, the psychological side of it, the communication side of it, the sociological side of it, group dynamics, etc., etc. So just think wide and approach that very nicely for me. It's not an easy one, but it's the kind of thing that you are going to encounter somewhere in your lifetime. And that's why I've put it in there. All right. Then on Saturday, Saturday is the last Saturday that we are going to see each other. And we're going to basically do 4 things. First of all, we're going to discuss the IDEO case study. So read the case, have a look at the questions of the case, and we're going to discuss the IDEO case study. The IDEO case study is a bit of a how good are we, and how fantastic are we, and what have we done, and so on. But I want you to read beyond that. I want you to read between the lines. Are they really that good? Or are they just pretending to be that good? Okay? And we're going to discuss that on Saturday. That's the first thing. Secondly, I'm going to give you a presentation on creative leadership. And I'm going to share with you my personal journey and all the wonderful people that I've worked with in my lifetime who are creative leaders, who are known to be creative leaders. And I'm going to share with you the experiences I've had with these people, including people like Dr. Anton Rupert, Sol Kersner, and so on and so forth, people that I work very closely with. So I'm going to share with you creative leadership. Then we're going to talk about the innovation project, just again to set the scene for the innovation project and the next step for you now to start working on it and that sort of thing. And we're also going to cover a little bit on the unit assignment because Sunday a week is the final deadline, and then you need to submit your unit assignment. So please, just to forewarn you, don't wait until next weekend before you start working on the unit assignment. It's going to come back and bite you in the backside because it's a lot of work. All right. Okay, guys, any questions? Any questions or comments?
Yes, Prof.
Yes? Hi.
Yes, I'd like to get your clarification on question 1 and 2. For me, they're a little bit confusing. So the first one says, briefly record your perception of each of the individual dimensions. So you complete that questionnaire and you get the answers, but in those answers, it already tells you my perception of whatever is this. So do you want us to give you a summary of what that report said and leave it at that, or do you want us to elaborate?
No. I want you to cover the 10 dimensions on the question, does your organization support creativity? That's the question.
Where I'm getting confused is the report tells you that. So do you want a duplicate of what the report said, or something completely different from what the report said, that when you complete this dimensions of a creative working climate by the laureate education?
Okay. Yes, it does cover it to some extent, but I want you to have a fresh look at how you interpret the 10 dimensions and whether your organization is actually supporting creativity, yes or no. So just put your own glasses on. This is my company. These are the 10 dimensions. Is my company supporting creativity? And let me use the 10 dimensions and do that. You can obviously glean from the tool by all means, but just have a fresh look at it.
Okay, Doc. So in answering that question, because the next question now says, and question number 2, cite a specific example from your experience to support these 2 rankings. So I just want to make sure that what is expected of me from number 1 is different from number 2. As in, so now when I'm trying to tell you whether my organization is creative or not based on those 10 dimensions, can I also cite examples, or will that be like answering question 2?
In number 1, you can cite examples, but number 2 is really about the dimension where you scored the highest, the dimension where you scored the lowest, and give me an outstanding example to prove your point, why it is the highest and why it is the lowest. Just put the spotlight on it for me.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Any other questions? No, you're welcome.
Prof?
Yes, Debbie.
Yeah, am I the only one who's having a hard time accessing the case study? Because it actually takes me to a link where I need to put in a password.
Yep. Yep. You were given a password, an academic password. So you need to use your academic password to access it.
Oh, so it's just my normal Moodle and okay.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, guys? All right. Okay. I'm looking forward to see you on Saturday. I think we're going to have a nice discussion on Saturday, and you'll enjoy the presentation that I'm going to give you. And yeah, just read the IDEO case study a couple of times, and then we'll have a nice chat on Saturday about that. But I want you to look at it from the point of view as, like I said, that case study was written as, hey, look how great we are, but are they really that great? Okay, question it, and then we'll discuss it. Okay. Good. We'll see each other Saturday.
Adios.
Thank you.
Cheers, Ludi.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.